There we go, finally. All right, so this is all about grounding or earthing. How many of you have actually heard of that? If you want to raise your hands. Yes, okay. How many of you practice it? Not yet? Okay, all right, some of us, okay. All right, so we'll kind of go over what it is, like how to do it, and like what kind of other benefits there are. And then I have a couple of resources for people too. So if they want to get into it and kind of delve into it a little bit more, it really helps with that as well. So let's get going. Let's see. So grounding in general is also known as earthing, and it's about making direct physical contact with the earth. And if you cannot do that with either feet or legs or body surface in general, you can also do it through other products that actually are made specifically for doing so. And when we actually sit on the earth, we actually make an electrical connection to the earth. And so the idea is that the Earth's electrons, which are negative components, actually can help us and our body get more grounded and reduce our electrical potential so that we actually have less inflammation. So we get better health benefits out of this. So previous to us in this modern era of vehicles and cars and clothes and plastics and rubber and things like that, we used to always be in connection with the earth. We either walked barefoot, laid on the ground, slept on the ground. We had maybe leather moccasins when people started making clothes. And for all those millennia, we were always in contact with the earth. And that's how our body really developed, just like animals actually still also are in contact with the earth often. We work in connection with that. Now we have homes and high rises and vehicles. So we spend a lot of our time, if not probably 90% of our time, in these areas and in clothing that actually protects us from grounding to the earth. And if there's an electrical storm, great, that's actually perfect, right? Because we don't want to have that transfer of those major electrons. But naturally, though, the earth with that negative electrical charge, we want to be able to have that slow transfer back and forth from it to us. And the earth gets its electrical charge from lightning strikes. It gets thousands of lightning strikes per minute around the earth. So in general, these are some concepts of like all the pieces that we're using right now that keep us separated. Any synthetic material can keep us separated from actually making that connection. And so we'll kind of go through some of the pieces of like how we can change that. And sometimes it's literally just taking our shoes off and going to sit on the ground. And other things are things that we can actually use that are for indoor use as well. And this is obviously one of my favorite vehicles down here on the right, but they actually help us get place to place a lot quicker than on foot. But they also do protect us from that charge, which I shouldn't say protect, I should separate us. It separates us often from that charge. So what I like to say is calling it getting a barefoot adventure is like trying to take our shoes off. Like we're on vacations, you take your shoes off, you go running around. Little kids hate having shoes on. It's probably for a reason. And at some point we keep throwing the shoes back on the kids over and over and saying, nope, you got to wear these. And so if we actually take time every day to actually go get grounded, we actually feel a lot better. So doing this actually, just shows some different ways that people often do it, not always at a wedding, but that's actually fun. But it helps us when we actually get grounded to the earth and those electrons, those negative particles transfer to us. It helps reduce what's called free radical buildup in our body. And our bodies have that happen just from living and being like in its natural state. But we also get exposed to a lot of these things currently, and from some of the products that we use and some of the things we eat and some of the things we do to ourselves, like cigarette smoking and things like that. So those all create free radicals. And what that means is actually we have components in our body that are actually really reactive. and it can interact with tissue that causes more inflammation. And so if we can actually get grounded, we can reduce that level of free radicals in our body. And here are some of the products that people like started going back to, like creating leather shoes where you actually have leather soles. The thinner the sole, actually, the better, but some of these actually have grounding potentials in them as well. Some actually, there's actually a couple companies that make tennis shoes and athletic gear, actually, even. So when we're out on our run, we can actually have, it's actually molecules or particles of silver actually threaded through some of the soles. So you actually do create a physical grounding to the earth. And then when we have some of the pads, we have grounding pads for home and work. And those actually plug into an outlet, which actually is plugged only into the ground. So it's not actually plugged into the positive and a negative charge on the electrical outlet, but it's just plugged into the grounding, which goes outside from our home and grounds us to the earth. And so those in general, when we're doing our daily activities, can actually be helpful as well, because we can't all just suddenly, live outdoors and be outdoors all day long. And then there's grounding sheets also. So there's all kinds of products, actually. There's some that are pillowcases and some that are actually throws or blankets that are actually nice. And you can actually purchase things also for animal beds and products like that for animals that also have health conditions. Let's see. So some basic guidelines, like what should we do? How much should we do it? Usually from some of the studies that they've done, they show that actually about 20 minutes minimum is needed per day to actually get that good grounding. If we have higher inflammatory load or we have higher severity of health concerns, we will need a lot more time. So some people might need 60 minutes or more. Some people might need a lot more. There's studies that have shown that some people get better benefit after that 60-minute mark when they have cardiovascular disease or diabetes or obesity. There's personal confirmation from other people and patients that have come back and said once they actually started it and have MS or other similar autoimmune conditions, they had to do it a lot more. So maybe 2 hours a day throughout the day, going in spurts outdoors, or making sure they had grounding mats and grounding pads. They would have grounding sheets for those people in particular, so that they had that grounding for that 6 to 8 hours at night, but then still needed a good, 2 hours during the day where they're actually still grounded, but their symptom measures reduced significantly, which was an intense thing for them, because when you're not able to take certain meds that actually will do anything about a disease state, then having something like this actually help you move forward in life and actually gain more mobility and more activity is a tremendous benefit. And it's also free for the most part. So surfaces you can ground on versus those you cannot. Obviously, like anything that has to do with touching the soil. So grass, soil, sand, gravel, unsealed concrete or ceramic tiles that actually are in touch with the earth. So like outdoors, sometimes you'll see those on patios and things like that. Any rock, water, oceans, lakes, and streams. Salt water is actually more grounding actually than lake water. So a lot of times people might notice a difference between when they go to their lake locally or a pond locally versus when they actually go to the ocean and spend time at the ocean and on the beach. When the beach is wet or the surface of the soil is wet, we actually ground even better. And when you actually get into the water, when it's salt water, it is significantly better grounding. So there's a lot of difference between those pieces. And then, trees or living plants, if if somebody wants to have a little house up in a tree, that's awesome, if you can actually do it, but I don't know how many people can actually have that. Sidewalks, front patios, things like that, that are actually unsealed concrete are good ways to do that too. So even in the winter time, sometimes when I actually, and when it's cold out and you don't want to go walking around in snow, because that's actually not so comfortable, you can actually go sit on the front porch and put your feet on the ground. And that actually is grounding in that aspect. And then, of course, like grounding mats and other things like that that we mentioned earlier about different products. Um, and then things you cannot ground on. So asphalt and carpet, any painted or sealed concrete, plastics and rubber. So think about most of our shoes and things that we cover our feet with are made with those. Tar or tarmac, which is on top of most of the roofs. Um, any vinyl flooring or wood floors, because the wood floors are actually sealed, and most wood is not conductive anyway. And so any indoor surface for the most part is going to be not conductive to the earth. And then good days to ground on and not so good days. Well, we just got to use a little common sense with that. So basically any day that's sunny, warm, cold, wet, rainy, all those are great. Days when there's an electrical storm or a thunderstorm going, probably not such a great idea to stand outside with your bare feet on the wet ground. So those days would probably be the only days I would say not to do it. And so when we think about safety, a lot of times, like obviously if we're going to walk with bare feet, try not to walk in an area that's actually, hazardous to like getting our feet cut or having things go cross contamination through chemically treated lawns, things like that. Um, and then the other piece, which not very many people think of, is like we're using this to benefit our health, but it actually does have properties where not only is it reducing oxidative stressors and inflammation, it actually starts to help thin the blood. So they've actually had studies showing that it does actually thin the blood a little bit. So people that are on blood thinners do need to be careful and make sure that they're checking in with their doctors to make sure that they're checking if this is actually becoming an issue, because you can increase bleed risk. And any medication levels can be altered also. So if you are on a medication that needs to be tightly monitored, or even monitored over time, when medications are impacted by our detox pathways. And so we know that as a doctor, like how much we need to have somebody on. But if somebody's health and detox pathways improve, which they do with this, then those medications will actually be less in the bloodstream over time. So we need to make sure we're actually checking in on that. And if we're not needing it anymore, sometimes some of these health conditions start to reduce or dissipate, and then we may not need those medications anymore. So there are some things to consider when we do have other things on board, such as blood thinners or other medications. And then a little bit of this, some of the other health benefits just in general for grounding. We often get better sleep quality. Reduced insomnia occurs. So a lot of times if we're using daily grounding, that's one major benefit. Because a lot of times insomnia, if it's because of body pain or things like that, or anxiety, that actually gets reduced with grounding in general. If people have grounding sheets, people have much improved rest with those, and chronic pain and inflammation goes down. And then you can see also enhanced energy levels and faster recovery from physical activity. And part of that's due to actually having better sleep. Part of it's due to the less inflammation going on. And then just generally how vital our body gets again, like how much better it works. Athletes actually are known to do this more frequently now. I don't remember how long ago it was now, but one of the US competition sports teams actually did this as an experiment. So they all had grounding sheets put on their beds. And they found that they actually recovered better and they did better that year than what they'd done any other time. And so they and more teams and more athletes start using it just because of that. And then they find that they actually heal faster and recover faster from training and from competitions. So mental and emotional benefits, reduce stress and anxiety levels, improve mood, mental clarity, and a better sense of well-being. And overall, for most people, a better sense of connection to nature if they actually do the outdoor grounding. I don't know if any of you have had me or another doctor tell you, I want you to spend outside, get some nature time in. Not only is it because of I want you to see sunshine every day and get that exposure, but I want your feet on the ground. And I think that is really beneficial to most of us. So in general, like going back to like how it works, humans and organisms in general are bioelectrical. So that means that our body literally works on electrical potential all the time. So positive versus negative charges on all of our molecules is how everything seals together, how we create different structures in our body, how we actually get signals to happen so we can actually activate a muscle or send a nerve fiber activating, telling us we need to move something or that we need to think something. All of that is based on electrical gradients and electrical charges. Um, so doing those things and being alive actually uses up those energetic potentials. And then so eventually over time, we end up getting the free radicals that we were talking about. Doing all those activities diminishes the electrons, which are the negatively charged particles. And then that creates excess positive sometimes. So we end up needing to have that negative particle recharging us. And that's what we get from the earth. Free radicals that we get exposed to otherwise every day, X-rays, ozone, cigarette smoking, air pollutants, industrial chemicals. And that's not just if we're outside and you think of like this dirty city kind of impact, because for local, we don't really live in a really dirty city, not comparative to some of the ones I've been in. But this is also like the products we put on ourselves, the things we put in our mouth every day, because what kind of things are treating our foods before we actually get them into our mouth? What kind of environment are we in indoors? And if we have new furniture, new carpet, new paint, any of those things create free radicals because they off gas all the time. So just being alive and also just being in these environments that we create for ourselves actually gives us the need to actually be in touch with that earth. So when electrons are not replenished, like we were talking about, the inflammation starts to occur. And so our immune system and our health starts to suffer. Our immune system is constantly trying to combat inflammation, but to do so, it actually usually causes inflammation. So we get a little bit of a cycle that occurs with that. And if you guys have ever heard that the inflammation is the silent killer in the US and most advanced countries around the world in general. So that's, I would say, actually most countries at this stage. So arthritis, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disease, Alzheimer's, sleep disorders, depression, premature aging. All of those things are due to inflammation. And then so getting our bodies that electron potential back and reducing the free radicals is how we get back to natural health. And then I always like to state that animals that are outdoors in nature don't usually have these kind of diseases. They're actually grounded every day and every night. So, and they also can shake off stressors that we tend to hold on. So they have a couple benefits. So in general, this is just like a really small example of how a free radical and like electrons can help support like reducing that inflammatory potential. So on the right is the antioxidant or basically the earth or anything else that you consider as an antioxidant. So some foods have antioxidant properties as well. And so when you look in that middle section right there with the red, it shows that there's an electron missing, which is one of the circles there. And so this is a really reactive species inside our body trying to gain electrons from other molecules or atoms all the time. And that's where we get that inflammatory response within our body. So if we can actually get grounded with the earth or have high antioxidant foods on board more and more, then we can actually gain those electrons and reduce those free radicals. And because that actually makes it a more stable atom or molecule, depending on the structure. There, that's that. And then let's see. So for some experience, like I said, I already mentioned a couple people that did have good recovery when they're actually using this. There's more research going on right now to find out what other types of health conditions this can help and what are the ways we can actually use it. But personally, I've benefited from it for at least the past 15 years. Once I picked up this book in my school, and it was a very well-used book at the time, but I didn't ever see it checked out when I was actually working at the library at my school. And I just happened to come across it. And originally it was from quite a while back, and then they just redid the reprint on it with more information. But I read that book and my mind was like totally blown with like being able to utilize the earth and actually realizing why I felt so good when I was outside and doing activities that I tended to do. And so while I hike, camp, or hunt, I usually take off my boots. I actually sit on the ground. I actually will often take a nap in the middle of a hike, which my husband will just stand around and wait for me all the time. But my dog is smart and she'll come and lay down and take a nap with me. And it's usually 10 minutes and it feels like I slept for 2 hours. So I think that in itself, for me, it is the most restorative aspect that I can get is when I can actually lay down on the ground. And thinking about what times I've been at the beach on the Oregon coast and be able to take a nap. I always cover my face from the sun because I don't like the sun, but I always loved laying on the beach and I would sleep like a baby. And so I think those kind of things, and I do yoga at camp a lot of times on the bare ground. So that was always like it's always so much more restorative than just sitting in a camp chair or doing all the other things that you do at camp. But a lot of times we do things at camp that kind of degrade our body if we're partying with people and stuff. And instead, I like to sit on the ground a lot. So, and at home, I do also have grounding mats at my desk, on our bed, and my animals started gravitating towards them, which I thought was interesting. So when I'm trying to sit at my desk, they try to get under my feet onto the mat. So I got them their own bed, which is helpful because both my animals are a little bit older now, and hopefully it'll help keep them a little bit healthier too. So in general, like grounding puts us back into connection with Earth. We were previously in connection with it for eons and eons. It only takes at least like 20 minutes minimum usually per day, but up to like 60 or so for most people to get a pretty good benefit from it. It promotes restoration of the electrical balance within our body, aids reduction of inflammation and oxidation, which is linked to many of our current major health issues. I would highly encourage any of you to actually do grounding, try it and see how you feel, give it time. Like I said, sometimes people won't notice right away if they have major health concerns, but people that don't have major health concerns will often notice a benefit within those first few days of even trying it. A lot of times you feel a lot more calm and peaceful in general. And there's some more resources here that I put on here. There's a couple, oops, sorry, go back. There's a few books that are out there right now. Like I said, there's actually more than these, but you can get those books and actually kind of check into them and see, kind of go down the rabbit hole yourself so you have an idea of why this is so beneficial. There's a lot more information out there about studies that have been done. They actually have used a lot of, they use a lot of EEG machines and things like that. So they're measuring brain waves for people that do meditation, grounded versus not grounded. They found that people actually have much better brainwave patterns when they're grounded and meditating. And these are people that have meditated for 10 to 15 years that they did these studies with. So they would do the meditation ungrounded and measuring all these EEG waves, and then a lot of other like heart wave and heart rhythm. And then they would have them grounded, and then they would unground them again, but they wouldn't be telling them when they were grounding them or ungrounding them. They just kept all the data flowing. And when they collected everything, they found that brain waves were better, heart rate variability was better. And then the meditators actually reported their sensation of whether they actually felt better and more calm and had better meditation during that time. And I think there was, out of 10 in one of the studies, 8 of them actually had improvement of meditation, specifically during the 40-minute time frame they were actually grounded, and stated that they didn't feel the same at the beginning and they didn't feel the same at the end when they were ungrounded. And that was with them being questioned away from everybody else, which was actually really interesting. And then there's also the earthinginstitute.net, which is a good resource that actually gives you like a how-to and explains a lot of the health benefits and how to actually get into this a little bit deeper and how to get more research when you want to go down that rabbit hole. So that's kind of the gist of the whole piece for now. I know it's a shorter lecture, but do you guys have questions? I'd love to actually see if anybody else has had experience or if you guys have questions for me. You can go ahead and unmute if you want. Oh, yep. Here, let's see. I can't hear you.
Where is the best place to get these products?
So you can get them online. There's actually, so the earthinginstitute.net will have some. I can actually put some out on another link too. And what you're looking for on some of them is just grounding mat or grounding sleep pads, grounding sheets. And then the shoes, you can look up grounding shoes or natural shoes. And then one of the others would be electroconductive shoes.
All right. What did you say the link was?
earthinginstitute.net.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jennifer.
I used to be a Dr. Todd Schlattfers.
Say it again.
I used to be a patient of Dr. Todd Schlattfers.
Oh, great. That's great.
Yeah, and I talked to Hunter once on the phone.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, you're welcome. What's your name?
It's Dr. Misty Story.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have questions? Okay. Well, if anybody does, you're welcome to reach out to me here. I always love having questions and conversations with people about these things. If you want to look back at this later, you can always get on the website and just look up the video link because it'll have that on there. And then you can go through that and get the resources as well if you need to. Like I said, the book Earthing by Clint Ober is actually really kind of one of the big basic books actually. And Clint Ober did a lot of the groundwork for starting research on this. And then was joined by more of the medical community as he went forward. So otherwise, I hope you all get out this weekend. I know it's going to be a long, great weekend for most people and get your feet on the ground or your butt on the ground and read a book or just hang out.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. You guys have a good day.
You too.
Bye.